Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 2 of Paper Girls. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we are picking up any aftermath of the last episode, and I love kind of just like the first episode, going from adult Aaron to young Aaron. I like the fact is in this episode, we have adult Aaron like having a panic attack, so like tripping out, like thinking she's going crazy, that she might be having a psychotic break, and then at the same time we have young Aaron doing the same thing for different reasons. Older Aaron's like, wait, this is crazy, this is wild, am I crazy? Whereas young Aaron is like, I'm living in the same house that I grew up in, and like, where are my children or my husband here? And like, oh boy. And then obviously the like realities of like seeing her pictures of her mom, and I saw her dad I was like, oh, that must be her mom and her dad. I was like, wow, they're both, but she lost her dad like when she was 9, so they're preteens at best. So I was like, that wasn't that long ago, because this is her at like 12, so that was like her only like 3 years ago she lost her dad. But the reality of seeing like that picture of her mom and everything, it's like that's harsh, and so she ends up questioning her future self about a lot of stuff about why life went the way it did. It's like, where are the kids? It's like, kids? It's like, are we married? It's like, no, I love the whole, God, you sound just like mom. It's like, no, we're single. And she also talks about their mom. I guess at some point she got sick, and she, at the very least, older Aaron's like, well, at least mom's no longer suffering. And it turns out like her and Missy aren't close. She's like, I was kind of going through some struggles, and I didn't know how to interpret that, whether that was like a thing of like maybe she had like some vices that or something like that. But I think it's like she was the one, she's always been the responsible one, so she was probably the one that stuck by and looked after mom. And it's like, right, because all she said was, when I was going through what I was going through, Missy wasn't really there for me. So it's probably like, right, Missy got to go off and live her life while I was kind of stuck looking after mom. I was doing all this stuff. Like, I was trying to be the responsible one, and life didn't play out the way I wanted it to. And obviously finding out the truth about like, oh, hey, like, right, she's like, at your age, I was like obsessed with Growing Pains, because that's like her favorite show. And she's like, yeah, well, trying to say like our family life isn't like the Growing Pains. Like, because she kind of has this perfect image, I think, because like Growing Pains, I mean, I watched maybe a little bit, but I'm not that familiar with it. But I think it's one of those shows that's probably like, yeah, the all-American family, just like things working out, you know? And it's like, right, our family isn't the American dream doesn't always 100% work out for people. Life doesn't always work out for people. And I think it was so sad that like young Erin ended up chewing out her older version, because she's like, you're like a failure in so many regards and this and that, like you can't help us, because she's saying like we need to take a beat, we can't like rush into things. But Erin was chewing her out because Erin's so disappointed, like, right, you're not where I wanted to be, like I was supposed to be in Congress and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you remember this thing from 4th grade about like, and she's like, why would I remember something from that long ago? And it's like, yeah, because like her life isn't what she thought it would be. I mean, like, at that age, at 12, I don't know what my dream and aspirations were. Like, if 12-year-old me was to meet me present day, what would he think? I have no idea. He'd be like, oh, you're a fucking loser. Probably. And that's the sad thing, is that Erin's thinking that, which I mean, like, because the thing is, like, life doesn't always work out, because, you know, Erin doesn't know everything that goes on in her life. It's been 31 years. A lot of shit can happen. You know, a lot can change, a lot can go right, some things can go wrong. It just, you know, life isn't always just, you know, there, you know, because obviously just any life can be like that. Not everything works out great. And so but it's also because like, part of me wonders, is there a little bit of that, like, need to be like, no, like, well, because I was about to say, like, I wonder, is it a combination of just her own thing of, like, right, I need to be this powerful person so I can protect, like, look after my family, and just, like, she has these goals and aspirations for herself. And it's so interesting because, like, people would joke, like, you know, about, like, right, that's an Asian family for you, pushing you to be that. But I don't know if her mom necessarily pushed her for that, like, oh, be the greatest thing possible or anything like that. But it's like, it seems like that's something of her own ambitions. But I think it's like, right, maybe because she, like, after losing her dad, and she even said it, like, my mom never got over it. So I think she felt the need, like, that's why her mom was always so, I think, very overprotective of her, because it was like, right, Because it's like, right, you just saw your mom a couple hours ago for you, and now you're 31 years in the future and she's gone. It's like, you know, even more reason why she wants to get back is like, mom's still alive. I need to go back. I need to course correct my life, and I need to look after my mom. So, and obviously Mac is trying to, like, Mac out of anyone is also struggling the most with everything too, to the point she's trying to blast her music just to drown it out, because she's like, no, this can't be real, this can't. I mean, everyone else is having their own existential crises as well, just over throughout the episode. It just hits different people at different points, because KJ's wondering, like, right, the guy I hit, is he dead? Which we find out he's super dead. She left her hockey stick behind, and the leader of that group ended up finding it, and she ends up going after one of the guys that helped them, and she's like, oh, are you KJ? And he like drags her along, like, yeah, the underground. It's like, it's this and that, and ultimately ended up killing him without even getting any answers. Granted, she gets those answers at the end of the episode, but still. They have a leader called, I guess, the grandfather. It's like, right, should we tell the grandfather about it? This casualty. Because I love that thing of, there was that line of, this time is where you died, but you will rest here for all infinity, or something like that. Like, because it's like, it's a time thing of like, they're probably from the future, but it's like, right, this is where you died, and this was where you'll be buried, but your soul will live on throughout infinity. I guess it makes you almost think like, are they kind of it seems cultish like that. I mean, the wardrobe plus that makes me wonder, is it some kind of higher power, like cult or something? We'll have to wait and see. There's still a lot we don't know on that front, but also, like, let me know in the comments, what's up with this Weird Al thing? I think that's so fascinating, because the title was called Weird Al is Dead, and I'm like, well, it's in reference to Tiffany having a hamster named Weird Al, because she's like, Weird Al is dead. It's like, no, he's probably just old. She's like, no, my hamster's name is Weird Al. And I was like, because the reason why I'm saying, like, that's interesting, because the comic that this is based on is written by Brian K. Vaughan. If I'm not mistaken, he also wrote the comic that Why the Last Man was based on. And in that show, there was a episode referencing Weird Al being dead, I believe. I want to say it was like episode 6 or 7 or something like that. And I thought, and the fact is, we're getting another one called like Weird Al is Dead. I'm like, is that like some deep like Weird Al cut or something? Or is that like a specific like Brian K. Vaughan thing that he does? Like, is that I don't know what that is. It just, I thought that was interesting. Maybe, once again, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I was like, I could have sworn there's a Why the Last Man episode in reference to like Weird Al being dead or something. I'm like, that's so weird. It makes you wonder how Weird Al feels about like episode titles being like, Weird Al is dead. It's like, don't stop jinxing it. I'm alive. Stop. You know, so I think that's so interesting. So, obviously, Mac ended up sneaking off on her own, and she went to go find her house, and obviously checking out the town and how different it is, but going home, there was nothing there, and she sees this little slab where it seems like her and her brother Dylan put their handprints, and KJ ended up following her, and it's like, yeah, my house is gone. She's like, I wish I could have seen the bulldozer go through it. I know she says that like later on, like the wrecking ball going through it. She said that later on when she's talking to Aaron. But when it's all said and done, they have like this back and forth about like, oh yeah, this is the factory my dad worked at. It's like, yeah, and her dad was like, yeah, if between the Japs and the Jamesons, like he wasn't going to keep the job. And then you could tell immediately, like it made KJ uncomfortable. She's like, could you not like talk like that? She's like, what? Why does it matter? And it was like. And because once again, kind of coming up into that whole thing of like, right, her being Jewish and everything, and it's just like, right, this isn't. It's like, she's like, what do you think? This isn't Nazi Germany. She's like, then why did I get called? Like, why did someone call me a Jew bitch on my locker? And Mac is like, I would never do that. But it's like, and I think that's kind of an important thing too. Like, right, kids picking up their parents' rhetoric. Like her dad just being like, because she's like, yeah, like so many jobs in town were taken over. That, you know, it's like, but obviously there's a lot of Japanese American people who like, these are families that were in encampments and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's been 40 years, but it's still like that struggling afterwards. Like, you know, those next generations and stuff. So like, but once again, you're a kid, you're just like repeating what your dad said, because her dad's probably a dick and he's using all of that as a rhetoric and an excuse. So she's latching on to it because she's like, right, we're struggling. Like, maybe it's not even her dad's being a dick, but he's struggling, their family's struggling, because she talks about it later on. It's like, the reason why she does the paper route is because it's how she affords her lunch at school. Like, I can't afford it otherwise, my family's poor. So that's why I think, once again, it's like, you need someone to blame, and her dad blames like the Japanese, and I think the Jameson in regard of like, he drinks a lot. So maybe the thing of, he is kind of maybe a drunk and a dick, because I think she even calls him an alcoholic at one point in time. But it's like, yeah, like, so a lot of stuff in her life isn't great, so she kind of speaks that rhetoric. And when she looks at someone like KJ, I don't think it's necessarily her being a Jew, but once again, it's just like the rhetoric of like, oh, you're Jewish, you're rich, and blah 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 blah, like feeding into stereotypes, because it's her way of, like, she needs someone to blame and lash out at. Just like, interesting, like Mac is kind of blaming other people for the way her life turned out. Erin's blaming older version of herself for how her life turned out. So I thought that was interesting. They went in the woods to go back to where they found that device, which they're kind of immediate when they see a cell phone, they're like, oh, so maybe this thing is somewhat like a cell phone or something. And then she takes it to a guy, Coco, to check it out, because he's kind of I guess he works like, he's kind of at a phone store or tech store, and it seems like they went out on a date, or probably did a lot more. So, and Tiffany's like, right, we got to find older version of me. Like, obviously she's going to be on top of things. She's going to be this, she's going to be that. I think you do see like one scene in a trailer. Obviously, there's no context to it. Tiffany meeting herself. I don't think it's going to be the way she thinks it is. That's the thing, is I don't think any of them realize that their lives aren't quite what they think they are. Because we do kind of get a little bit of an answer to the time travel question. First and foremost, because the moment she was like, right, here's the 12-year-old me with her punk friends that you don't even know, and later on, older adult Erin references, after that day of doing her paper route, like after doing it for one day, she quit, and the others, Tiffany, KJ, and Mac, never bothered learning your name. You were always just new girl. So that's why they're not close present day. Once again, it is the thing of, so it is what I thought it was. The time travel is what makes them click. They are the paper girls. Like, they became a unit, they became besties because of it. But in the original timeline, which is this, once again, it's a paradox thing of like, their lives just going the way it normally would. They never were close. Never got close. She, I'm sure a combination of just everything she was dealing with at the time. Her mom trying to be super nice to the neighbors so they'd be accepting of them, but she probably didn't really have many friends, if any at all. And I think a lot of that kind of plays into because I think they even, I might be misremembering, but I think there was some kind of reference to like, yeah, things aren't great. Like, yeah, things weren't great then. Things aren't 100% great, like in that like race conversation, I think. Is kind of what she was kind of alluding to. I feel like there was something very specific said that was kind of that correlated to that. But I thought that was so messed up that Tiffany was kind of, I mean, obviously she's stressed out. She wants to go home. Her whole life's in front of her. Her whole family's there because none of them know about their families. And it's like, right, because they were talking amongst themselves. It's like, do you think our parents are dead? And it's like, Jesus, let's not go there. But it's like, it's a possibility. Because Mac's happy because it's like, right, if the house is torn down, she's like, I knew I'd get out of Dodge. Of course I wouldn't be living here, because it seems like amongst the four of them, the only one still living in town is Erin. She's still living in the house that she grew up in. I mean, if truth be told, in my circumstances were different, I could definitely see myself in that situation. It's just like, legitimately, it's a long story. If I never fractured my ankle, I'd probably still be like living in my hometown now. Probably still living in like, I could definitely be in a situation where I would be like moving back to the house I grew up in. That's always still a possibility currently, But regardless, putting all that aside, But Tiffany's so sure, like, yeah, like me, like who I am, I'm the valedictorian, I'm the smart person, I'm the honor. Like, of course I got this on lock. Future me's probably got this figured out. I kind of blamed Aaron when like the device kind of short circuited. It's like, well, to be fair, it's like, how is she supposed to know how this operates and how it works? And she's kind of getting the blame for it. So they look stuff up on the internet to find older Tiffany, which she does, and she finds out like, oh my god, I own my own institute and stuff like that. We'll see. Once again, I think she's going to be a little disappointed that her life isn't what she thought it was. Maybe some aspects of it will be kind of the good life, but maybe other aspects of it won't be. And I thought it was so interesting because, well, obviously there's the Mac and Aaron thing of them kind of being okay, everything's good between them because she apologizes like, right, I kind of shot you and everything, so sorry about that. I promise I won't do it again. And then there's the whole situation with KJ and older Aaron. And Aaron's like, right, she's never heard anyone before. And it's like, oh, like sports? It's like, yeah. She's like, I watch baseball from time to time. And she references like the Indians. She's like, yeah, even though that name's kind of a lot more problematic these days. And then young Aaron's like, you don't even like baseball. I guess it's like, once again, it's like, for her, it's like, right, you're basing this on your current likes. Once again, a lot can change in 31 years, but she wants to shoot down anything because every aspect about her older self is so disappointing to her. So it's like, right, you don't even like sports, like, you know, like how different did my life go off course for 31 years? And she starts speaking to herself in Mandarin when she starts tearing her older self apart. Because I think part of that conversation was in reference to like, right, you couldn't even do that, right? I'm assuming she was saying like, right, I spent so much time looking after and taking care of mom. And it's like, yeah, you couldn't even do that, right? Because she's gone. Maybe that's what she's in reference to. Because Aaron says like she had her dream of being like a big shot, obviously a senator and stuff. And then eventually like having a house, her and Missy would live next to each other. Their kids would be best friends and stuff. This is how she pictured her life. But it's like, right, like no one's life, like I'm sure you could probably count, I mean, it happens, but I think rarely anyone, like when you dream about what your life is going to be, who you're going to be when you're 12 years old, that you change so much. Even going from 12 to probably 18, you changed a lot in like, you know, those 6 years. And then even more so when you got 21, so on and so forth. And, you know, like so much can happen, so much of you could change. Era just never bothered learning all that her older self had to go, like what awaits her in the future, you know? So they end up leaving, but older Aaron ends up activating the device and it kind of syncs to her. So what that entails, we'll have to see. Hopefully that won't be an issue where they can track her, but I'm curious like what that mechanism is and what exactly did Aaron connect herself to. They go to the mall, they kind of like stash and like hide out until it's time, till they can find a way to get to like older Tiffany. But I think as the conversation's going back and forth, and just like, I think them all talking made Mac insecure. That's why she lashed out, because it's like, oh, you guys, these good life, these good experiences, and then KJ makes reference to this time. It's like, oh, you guys are picking up coins out of like, your brother was doing that, and then you pushed him in. And after that story was when Mac really snapped. And I think it's because her brother was probably trying to get as much money as possible. Like, right, do whatever it could so he could get something or she could get something. Maybe Mac reacted like that because it's like, oh, you're embarrassing us. You're doing that, like going for every coin you can find in public, and maybe that's what irritated her. And KJ being the one to tell that story irritated her the most. It's like, oh, you're a stalker or something? It's like, no, I was just here shopping with my mom. Like, of course you were. And then she tears into everyone around her because she was just lashing out, because she's like, because Tiffany also made a reference to like, oh, because she said like, because Mac, you know, her way of dealing with things is just being an asshole. She's deflecting. That's her way, like being sarcastic and deflective. It's her defense mechanism to deal with all of this. So she made reference like, oh, KJ's probably in jail, which KJ didn't appreciate that shit. It's like, you know how much me hurting that guy like freaked me out. Because even she was talking to older Aaron being like, why was that inside of me? Was there a part of me? Because part of me wonders, it's like there might be some, and you know, because obviously it's not that big of a generational gap between her and the Holocaust. It was like, it's the 80s, so it's been 40 years, but that was still, her grandmother went through that because she was talking to Mac about it. So maybe there's some part of you that's like worried about, like, right, what is it, ancestral trauma is kind of what I've talked about recently. I think that's ingrained in you because it's like, right, people still, like, the sad thing is, like, right, the Holocaust happened, and the fact is it can happen and did happen also means it's totally possible for that to happen again. It's like, because for her, once again, Mac saying, like, this isn't Nazi Germany. It's like, well, yes, someone still called me a Jew bitch on my locker. So it's still kind of indicating, like, right, people will hate her for being different, for being a Jew. So it's like, it's not that far off. So her like, the guy pointing a gun at her, it made her scared. And it's like, right, like, afraid that, maybe on some level she's afraid of history repeating itself, Once again, it's not that far out. It's only been 40 years at that point in time. I mean, hell, even present day, it hasn't been that long. It's been, 77 years or so since, like, World War II ended? Like, that's not that long ago. That's still less than 100 years ago that was it, And once again, it's even more so for her from being from the 80s. So, I think that's what kind of triggered that in her. But once again, Mac throwing that in her face, and then Tiffany joking, being like, oh, your brother probably ended up in prison. Because Mac takes offense to it, because I'm sure, like, throughout her entire life, she's always had people look down on her family. And she it's like, yo, my brother's doing good. He's a doctor. Like, he works at an ER or something like that. So she's like, I'm going to stay with him. See, like, our family's growing up. Like, we're not the pieces of shit that people kind of treat us like. So she was lashing out at everyone because they made her, like, it played into a lot of her own issues and insecurities that she was dealing with. And so she bounces. She's like, yeah, who cares? Like older Aaron said, we don't really care about each other. We were just happened to be on the same paper route. We bonded over, like, we came together over that. But obviously, based on what Aaron said, we're not close. We don't know each other. So, like, see ya, and bounces, even though they should stay together. And even threatening, like, KJ being like, yo, what are you going to do? You want to hit me in the stick with that guy? Like, go ahead, like, slugger, like, hit me type of shit. And KJ was like, and just kind of sat back down. She's like, yeah, that's what I thought. Once again, Mac is a defense mechanism. She's trying to act tough because she's scared, so kind of a sad situation. It said a lot of shit, especially after she made up with, had that heart-to-heart with KJ and Aaron, just to kind of fly on not only them, but also Tiffany, too. So that's kind of sad. But like I was talked about earlier, Adina Porter's character tracked down KJ's, her parents. Sounded like she probably just knocked them out, but whatever the case may be, there's a purple light there, so I don't know if that's like them being held captive or like what that's in reference to. Like, I hope she didn't kill them, but I mean, we don't know. We'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.